I never thought that coming home from the hospital would feel like trespassing. The taxi pulled away, and there I stood, on the porch of the house I'd lived in for 38 years. But the key in my hand didn't turn the lock. I tried again, then jiggled it like maybe the cold had warped the metal. That's when I saw it. The new silver padlock. My name gone from the mailbox, replaced by a plastic label with J&B Edwards written in Brooke's loopy handwriting. The house I paid for. The walls I painted. The roses I planted every spring. A voice behind me, sweet and sharp like a sugar-coated knife. "Linda? Oh, you're back early." I turned. There she was. Brooke, my daughter-in-law. Barely 30, all confidence and collagen, in yoga pants and a perfect ponytail. She didn't look surprised. If anything, she looked mildly annoyed, like I'd interrupted something. "I was discharged 2 days ahead of schedule," I said slowly. My voice felt strange in my throat. "Where's Jason?" Brooke crossed her arms. "At work. We didn't expect you yet." My suitcase sat beside my cane on the porch. The driver must have moved it there before I even noticed. My cane. I picked it up. "I can't get in. My key doesn't work." "Oh," she said lightly. "Yeah, we changed the locks. Legal stuff." I stared at her. "What legal stuff?" Brooke didn't blink. "Jason filed the property under our name. It's for your own benefit, Linda, to simplify taxes. Remember?" "No, I never agreed to that." Brooke gave a dramatic sigh. "It was all handled while you were recovering. You signed the papers, don't you remember? Power of attorney? You were still foggy from the stroke, I guess, but it's all done now." I felt my legs wobble. I gripped the porch rail, heart hammering. "I'm not confused," I said, my voice rising. "That's my house." A curtain twitched across the street, neighbors watching, pretending not to. Brooke tilted her head, voice syrupy. "I think you're still a little emotional. Maybe you should go back to the care center. They said you'd be there until the end of the month." I left early. They cleared me. "I'm not confused," I repeated, but my words felt weightless. "I live here. Jason and I live here now." Her voice dropped to a chill. "You should go, Linda. It's not a good look, standing out here causing drama. You need rest. I'll call you a ride." I didn't respond. I couldn't. My jaw clenched so tightly it hurt. She turned and walked inside, closed the door behind her. Just like that. I stood outside that house for 26 minutes, long enough for my fingers to go numb, long enough to see the people across the street peeking out and whispering, long enough for my heart to completely break. The cane in my hand wasn't just for balance anymore. It was the only thing keeping me upright, because the weight in my chest, grief, betrayal, humiliation, was too much to bear alone. So this is how it ends, I thought. But it wasn't the end. Not yet. 6 weeks earlier, I woke up in a cold hospital room with a dull ache behind my right eye and a nurse calling my name gently but urgently. "Linda, you've had a minor stroke. You're okay. You're in the hospital." That moment, the room blurred like water on glass. My brain worked, but slowly, sluggish, like everything was underwater. My words didn't come right. Jason was at the hospital within the hour. Brooke followed with a bouquet and her phone already out, snapping a photo like it was some kind of field trip. "Oh, Mom," she said, laying a cool hand on my arm. "You scared us. But the doctor said it was very minor. You're lucky." Jason nodded solemnly, but his eyes didn't quite meet mine. "We've been talking," he said, crouching beside my bed like he had news to break gently. "You're going to need some recovery time, and the house isn't the easiest place right now. The stairs, the clutter, the stress." I blinked, still trying to fully grasp what was happening. "I can recover at home," Brooke jumped in. "We've already looked into a beautiful care center just 10 minutes from us. It's quiet, they have full-time staff, therapy, your own private room. It's temporary, of course. Just until you're steady again." Jason added, "We'll take care of everything at home. Bills, groceries, mail. We'll visit every day." Every word was laced with concern. Every look, every touch, every promise was polished and practiced. And in that foggy, broken state, I believed them. Because they were my family. Because I wanted to believe I mattered to someone. Because I didn't want to be a burden. So I nodded. And within 48 hours, I was checked into Willow Glen, a neutral-smelling building with beige walls, friendly staff, and daily bingo games. My room had a twin bed, an overbed tray, and a framed quote above the dresser that said, "Recovery is a journey, not a destination." I clung to that phrase for the first few days, told myself this was just temporary, that Jason and Brooke had my back, that I was lucky. They visited twice in that first week. Jason brought magazines and a phone charger. Brooke came the second time with a box of herbal tea and a little clipboard, just to help you keep track of your medications. I was so grateful. I even cried when they left. "I'm so lucky," I said to the nurse that evening. "My son and daughter-in-law are taking such good care of me." The nurse smiled, but something flickered in her eyes. I didn't know it then, but I'd seen that look before. In my years teaching, when a student tried to hand in someone else's work, pity, resignation. A quiet warning you don't want to hear yet. But I didn't see it for what it was. Not then. I thought I was being protected. I didn't know I was being put away. The first 2 weeks, they called every day. Brooke would answer with a bright, sing-song, "Hi, Mom," and fill the minutes with cheerful updates. How they were organizing the pantry, painting the guest bathroom a calming gray, how Jason was finally fixing that squeaky back door like I'd asked for years. Sometimes she'd hold the phone up so I could hear the hammering. "See, he's really getting into it. He says it's therapeutic." Jason would chime in too, though always briefly. "Love you, Mom. You're sounding better already." That was all I needed. Just the sound of his voice, that boy I raised, making me feel like I still had a place in the world. When I hung up each night, I felt steadier. It was lonely in that little room with the beige walls and the soft click of nurses' shoes outside, but their voices made it bearable. I'd lay back, close my eyes, and picture the house alive with care, Brooke fluffing pillows, Jason sweeping up leaves in the yard. I imagined them setting aside mail for me, paying the bills on time, making a fresh cup of tea with lemon, just the way I liked it. Then, just like that, the call stopped. At first, I wasn't worried. They're probably just tired, or busy, or maybe they're planning a surprise. Maybe painting my room, rearranging the furniture, deep cleaning the rugs. I told myself anything to keep the silence from sinking in. But the days dragged on, one after the other, with no phone ringing. The nurses were kind, but their lives weren't mine. My neighbor in the next bed, Sharon, snored through most afternoons and talked in her sleep about dead husbands and bills unpaid. The meals were warm but tasteless. The days bled into one another like watercolor, blurry, faint, forgettable. After a week of no calls, I left a voicemail. "Hi, sweetheart," I said into the line, trying to sound upbeat. "Just wanted to check in. Hope everything's okay at home. I miss you." Nothing. 3 more days. Then I sent a text. "Let me know when you're free to talk. I'd love to hear how the house is coming along." Still nothing. I asked the nurse to help me check my phone. Maybe something was wrong with it. Maybe I'd accidentally blocked them. She looked through the settings carefully, shook her head gently, and handed it back. "No issues here, Ms. Linda. Maybe they're just distracted. It happens. Distracted." That word sat in my chest like a stone. I tried not to let it show. I played bingo on Thursdays, watched the same afternoon news shows on mute. I even started reading the books Brooke brought during her second visit. But every time I saw the photo of my house taped beside my bed, the one Jason had taken during our last summer barbecue, I felt the silence more deeply. My home, my family, they were just distracted. I had no idea that while I sat in that recovery bed, counting the hours between phone calls, they were tearing down my life, one room at a time. I was sitting by the window, watching two squirrels chase each other across a maple tree, when Nurse Diane knocked gently and stepped in with a tablet in hand. "Hey, Linda," she said, casual as ever. "You ever use Facebook?" "Now and then," I replied, sitting up straighter. "Why?" She walked over and sat beside me, a hint of hesitation in her smile. "I was scrolling through some decor groups. I follow this one for mid-century remodels, and look who popped up." She turned the screen toward me. It was Brooke, perfectly posed with one foot tucked behind the other, smiling like an influencer. The caption read, "Sneak peek of our latest home renovation project. Modern meets classic. Can't wait to show you the full transformation." Hashtags piled underneath. Hashtag new home vibes. Hashtag kitchen goals. Hashtag blessed. But it wasn't the smile that stopped my breath. It was the cabinets behind her. The pale blue I had painted myself with a stiff wrist and masking tape. The ceramic rooster salt and pepper shakers that once belonged to my grandmother, now displayed like props. I took the tablet from Diane and pinched the screen to zoom in. My kitchen, but stripped of me. The countertops gleamed, new marble from the looks of it. The floor tiles were gone, replaced with wide planks of expensive wood. My lace curtains replaced by sleek blinds. When was this posted?" I asked, though my voice was barely a whisper. "Yesterday," Diane said softly. I kept staring at the image. Every detail was a betrayal. The lemon-printed tea towel I'd loved, gone. The magnet I got from my trip to Arizona, vanished. In its place, a curated scene for likes and strangers' comments. "That's my kitchen," I said. Not to her, not to anyone really. Just a breath of disbelief. "I figured," Diane said. She didn't push. Just sat there with me while the cold realization washed over me. My hands trembled as I handed the tablet back. The image was already burned into my mind. It wasn't just a remodel. It was a replacement. A quiet erasure. They hadn't just been distracted. They were rebranding my life like it was a fixer-upper property show. And suddenly, everything made sense. The silence, the absence, the over-eagerness to send me away, to recover. They weren't preserving my life while I healed. They were gutting it, piece by piece, while I wasn't there to stop them. I called Jason 3 times that night. No answer. Just his voice, hollow and impersonal. "You've reached Jason. Leave a message." The first time, I didn't say anything. I just held the phone to my ear, trying to decide whether to cry or scream. Neither came. I hung up. The second time, I whispered, "Hey, sweetheart. I saw Brooke's post. Looks like the house is coming along. Just wanted to ask, when can I come home?" I ended it there. No accusations. No tears. I was still hoping. God, I don't even know for what. An explanation? An apology? Some assurance that this was all just one big misunderstanding? But the truth was, I already knew. By the third call, I left a longer message. "Jason, I don't understand what's happening. That was my kitchen. That was my home. I know you said this was temporary, but it's been weeks. I'm feeling stronger now. I can manage on my own. I want to come home." I paused, then added quieter, "I miss you. I miss my house. Please call me." I ended the call and sat there holding the phone like it was an anchor, keeping me from sinking into the beige carpet. Still nothing. No ring, no buzz. No word from my son. That night, I didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, watching the shadows shift every time a car passed outside. The faint hum of the heater, the occasional creak of pipes, everything felt distant and unreal. In the darkness, I started doing what I hadn't allowed myself to do yet. I went over every conversation, every paper I'd signed. Had I missed something? Had they slipped something into those medical authorization forms while I was foggy and scared? I remembered Brooke sitting beside my bed that first week, clipboard in hand, saying things like, "Don't worry, it's all routine, and just sign here so we can talk to your doctors." Had that been it? Had I handed them the keys to my life while I was trying to recover? I felt stupid, old, weak, and worst of all, alone. Because what do when the child you raised uses your own vulnerability as a tool against you? You start to question everything, including yourself. Families show their true colors when there's paperwork involved. Sharon said it casually, peeling the lid off a pudding cup with the same carelessness she gave most things. She was 71, had broken her hip in a fall 2 months prior, and didn't believe in sugarcoating anything. "What do you mean?" I asked, trying to sound disinterested. But my fingers tightened around the cup of chamomile tea I hadn't touched. She shrugged. "Seen it before. Friend of mine? Went into rehab for her knee. Came out and found her daughter had sold the house. Claimed it was too much for her to manage. Moved her into a senior flat without even asking. Took her dog too." I blinked. "Her daughter did that?" "Yep." Sharon took a bite of pudding. Smiled the whole time. Said it was for her safety. Said she'd, quote, "adjust eventually." I didn't reply. I just stared at the little steam rising from my tea, trying not to imagine my roses being torn out of the front yard, or my china boxed up and listed online. Sharon looked at me, eyes sharp despite her slow gait. "Why? What's got you looking like someone just pulled the rug out from under you?" I hesitated, then said carefully, "I think my son and his wife are making decisions without me." She snorted. "Well, join the club. Most people our age are invisible unless we're paying for something." I wanted to say no, that Jason wasn't like that, that he loved me, that I must be misunderstanding the situation, that I hadn't raised someone who would steal the house out from under his own mother. But my silence said what I couldn't. Sharon's tone softened slightly. "Look, maybe it's not what you think. Maybe they're just clumsy about it. But if your gut's telling you something's wrong, don't ignore it. Get someone to look at the paperwork. And don't trust anyone who smiles too much while handing you a pen." I gave a faint laugh, even though nothing was funny. She was right. Every time Brooke had explained a form, she'd worn that polished smile. The kind you practice in front of a mirror. The kind that looks like kindness until you realize it's the last thing you'll see before the trap snaps shut. "I did sign some things," I said quietly. I was still groggy from the stroke. "They said it was temporary. Just for the medical stuff." "Then you'd better double-check what temporary means," Sharon said, licking the spoon clean. That night, while she snored behind me, I stared up at the ceiling and wondered just how badly I'd been fooled, and how much of what I still thought was mine wasn't anymore. The next morning, I made the call. Not to Jason, not to Brooke, to my bank. It started simple. Just a gut check, a quiet need to feel in control of something again. Maybe if I saw my balance, if I transferred a few bills on my own, I'd feel less like a ghost haunting my own life. The woman on the line was polite, professional. "Can I verify your identity, ma'am?" she asked after I gave my name. "Of course," I said, answering the usual questions. "Date of birth, address, last 4 of my social." Then came the pause. She cleared her throat. "I'm sorry, Ms. Warner. I can't give you account access. You're no longer listed as the primary manager." I froze. "What?" She spoke slowly, like I was the one with a hearing problem. "The account was updated 5 weeks ago. There's a designated representative now. All activity has to go through them." I gripped the phone tighter. "Who is the representative?" She hesitated. "Brooke Warner Edwards." My breath caught in my chest. "She's my daughter-in-law," I said automatically, even though the words felt foreign now, like a title that had expired without notice. "I understand," the woman said gently. "But unless you come into a branch with ID and legal paperwork revoking her authority, I can't grant you access. It's for your protection." I wanted to scream. Protection. They said the same thing when they put me in that care center. They said it when they changed the locks. And now they were saying it as they locked me out of my own account for my protection. "How was she added?" I asked, voice trembling. She presented a signed power of attorney form, dated the week you were hospitalized. My hand went cold. I remembered the clipboard, the rush to sign, the way Brooke smiled and said, "It's just so we can manage your insurance paperwork." That smile again. The practiced one. I hung up without finishing the call. My tea had gone cold. My spine felt like ice. I didn't know what scared me more, the realization that I had lost control of my finances, or the fact that I hadn't even noticed until now. Everything they had done, they'd done quietly. With fake concern. With paperwork. With smiles. And the terrifying thing? They hadn't needed to break into my life. I had handed it to them. Open-palmed. Trusting. They just took it. And never gave it back. I left Willow Glen 2 days early. Didn't tell Jason. Didn't tell Brooke. Just packed my things and asked Nurse Diane to call me a cab. The ride home felt like crossing into enemy territory. My stomach turned at every familiar street. The trees I used to trim. The mailbox where I used to tuck notes for the mailman during holidays. Every inch of it mine, or so I thought. The taxi pulled to the curb. I stepped out slowly, cane in one hand, overnight bag in the other. My breath caught when I looked up. New locks, a new doorbell, and a missing name from the mailbox. It used to read L. Warner. Now it just said, The Edwards. I stood there for a moment, blinking like it was a trick of the light. Then I reached for my old key, because somewhere deep inside, I still wanted to believe I was wrong, that maybe they just upgraded the locks for safety, that this wasn't what it looked like. But it was exactly what it looked like. The key didn't work. I was still fumbling with it when the door opened. Brooke stood there in leggings and a silk blouse, holding a latte like this was just another Tuesday. "Linda," she said, her voice coated in condescension. "I didn't know you were getting out early." I stepped back slightly. "Why is the lock changed?" she smiled. "For security. There's been a lot of thefts lately." "That's my house," I said, heart pounding. Brooke didn't flinch. "Actually, it's not." I stared at her, not understanding. She held up a manila folder and gave it a gentle tap. "You signed the transfer papers, remember? For tax purposes." Jason explained it all. "No, I signed a power of attorney. For medical forms," she laughed. "That was part of it. But you gave us the authority to handle other matters too. You were still foggy from the stroke. We figured we'd take care of it while you rested. It's all legal." I shook my head. "I never agreed to this." "You did," she said simply. "You just didn't realize what you were agreeing to." And just like that, the truth shattered around me. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It wasn't an accident. It was a plan. "I want to speak to Jason," I said, my voice low and shaking. "He's at work," she said, casually sipping her coffee. "And honestly, he's exhausted. This transition's been a lot. We're finally settling in. You being here, it's just going to confuse things." I glanced past her shoulder. My living room, my recliner, my framed family photos, all still there. But the air smelled different, like something sour had settled in and taken root. Brooke stepped outside and pulled the door half closed behind her, lowering her voice. "You should go, Linda. There's a really nice assisted living facility Jason looked into. It's affordable. You'll have your own room, no stress." I didn't move. "I know this is hard," she added, faux sympathy thick in her voice. "But we had to think of the future. You're not exactly capable anymore. It's better this way." My legs wobbled. I gripped the cane tighter. Not capable? I wanted to scream, to break something, to shake her until the truth came spilling out and Jason came running out the door to tell me it was all a terrible mistake. But no one came. It was just me, the porch, the cane, and my name. Gone. Stripped from everything I once owned. And in that moment, I stopped waiting for rescue. Because the people who put you out won't ever come back to let you in. I don't remember walking away from the house, only the way my knees ached as I stepped off the porch. The way Brooke didn't even wait for the cab, just closed the door behind her, as if I were a solicitor trying to sell something nobody wanted. I sat at the bus stop down the street for almost an hour. I didn't call anyone. I didn't cry. I just sat there, watching the sky go gray as the sun dipped behind the trees. The cane felt heavier than usual. The overnight bag on my lap dug into my thighs, but I didn't move it. Eventually, I called one person. Nancy. We hadn't spoken in months, maybe more. Life had drifted us apart, but I knew the sound of her voice would be a lifeline. "Linda?" she answered, breathless like she'd rushed to pick up. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. Just air. "Linda, are you okay?" "I need a place to stay," I whispered. She didn't ask why. She just said, "I'll put the kettle on." By the time I got there, Nancy had fluffed the couch pillows and pulled out the good blankets, the one she usually saved for her grandkids. She made tea the way I liked it, with too much honey and a splash of milk, and didn't press me until I was ready. I told her everything: the care center, the bank call, the lock, Brooke's smirk, my name missing from the mailbox. Nancy's face shifted from concern to disbelief to something close to fury. "You need to fight this," she said, setting her mug down with a sharp clink. "You have to. They can't just take everything." "I signed something," I admitted, voice shaking. "Back at the hospital. Power of attorney. Jason said it was just so they could talk to the doctors." Nancy leaned back and stared at me. "Did you read it?" "I trusted him," I said. She didn't say anything for a long time. When she finally did, her voice was soft. "That's the worst part, isn't it? Not the papers. Not the house. The fact that it was him." I nodded. "Listen," she continued, voice gaining strength. "This happens. More than people think. They wait until you're vulnerable, sick, tired. They smile, they talk sweet, and they take everything. But you are not helpless. You've still got your mind, you've still got fight left, and you've still got me." My throat tightened. I hadn't heard anyone say that in so long, that I wasn't alone. Nancy poured more tea and added, "You're not going back in there until it's on your terms. Understand?" I didn't nod. Not right away. I still wasn't sure if I believed I could undo what had been done. But for the first time in weeks, the numbness cracked, and something underneath it, rage, maybe, started to breathe. The next morning, Nancy placed a flyer in front of me between a plate of toast and my barely touched tea. "Elder Justice Legal Aid," it read. "Protecting seniors from financial abuse, coercion, and fraud." "They helped my cousin last year," Nancy said, pouring more coffee. "Her son tried to remortgage her house without telling her. These people took one look at the paperwork and had the whole thing frozen in a week." I stared at the paper, then at her. "You think this is abuse?" Nancy didn't flinch. "What else would you call it, Linda? They took your home, your name, your money. They locked you out like a stray cat. That's not a misunderstanding. That's a con." I exhaled slowly. I still can't believe Jason. "Jason let it happen," she interrupted gently. "Whether he pushed it or let Brooke do the dirty work, he let it happen." I looked down at the flyer. There was a number at the bottom. I picked up my phone. The receptionist on the line was calm, professional. She asked for my name, my age, a summary of what had happened. When I mentioned the power of attorney, she stopped me. "Do you have a copy of the document?" "No," I said. "I signed it at the hospital. Brooke had it. I didn't even read it. I was still recovering." There was a pause. "Okay. That's actually helpful. If it was filed during a period of cognitive or physical impairment, and if you didn't have independent legal counsel, we can challenge it." My heart skipped. "You can?" "Absolutely," she said. "But we'll need evidence, emails, texts, any paperwork they gave you. And we'll need to verify your mental state at the time of signing. Hospital records will help." She gave me a list. I wrote every word down. By that evening, I'd opened my old email account on Nancy's tablet and started digging. I found the photo Brooke had emailed me of the kitchen. Refresh. I found the texts where she said, "Don't worry, we've got everything handled while you recover." I found Jason's message from the first week. "Just sign whatever Brooke gives you. It's all standard." Standard. A word that now tasted like ash. I pulled out every receipt I had stuffed in my wallet from Willow Glen, noted every date I remembered seeing a nurse, any day I missed medication, because I couldn't speak clearly enough to ask. The fragments of those foggy days began forming a picture of a woman taken advantage of, at her lowest, by the people she trusted most. Nancy helped me organize it all in a binder. She color-coded it with tabs, texts, emails, bank records, photos. "You're going to walk into that office with a case," she said, snapping the cover closed. "You're not just a victim. You're their worst nightmare, a victim who writes things down." I smiled for the first time in days. Because she was right. They'd stolen from the wrong old woman. And now I was gathering every receipt of betrayal, every scrap of proof, and I was going to use them all. 2 days later, I held it in my hands, the document that changed everything. Brooke had filed it at the hospital, quietly, confidently. A thin, bland packet labeled "Limited Power of Attorney." A copy had finally been obtained through the legal aid team, stamped and time-stamped, signed with my shaky scrawl at the bottom of page 3. I stared at it for nearly 10 minutes before I could bring myself to read past the title. The wording was precise, sterile, legal language crafted to confuse. But buried in the fine print, just beneath a paragraph about routine administrative authority, it said, "Authority shall include, but not be limited to, financial transactions, property management, and legal decision-making, until such time as the principal revokes in writing, or is deemed fully rehabilitated." I blinked. They hadn't just handled my medical records. They'd given themselves legal access to everything. The temporary document? There was no expiration date, no clause requiring medical reassessment, no third-party oversight. It was wide open. And Jason had signed as witness. I sat back in the chair, hands shaking. I remembered how it happened so clearly now. The nurse had just given me something for the headache. I'd been drifting in and out. Jason had held my hand while Brooke hovered at my side, flipping through pages. "You trust us, right?" she had said. "We just need to make things easier while you rest." I had nodded. Of course I trusted them. And they had taken everything under the disguise of help. I passed the copy to the lawyer from the legal aid office, Karen, a sharp-eyed woman with a voice like steel and honey. She read it once, then again slower, her mouth tightening. "This was drafted to look harmless," she said, "but they used it like a crowbar." "Can I revoke it?" I asked. "You already have, by contacting us," she said. "But we're going to make sure a court sees it too, especially once we file for injunctive relief on the house." "Injunctive relief?" I echoed. "It means," Karen said, standing, "we're freezing the property before they try to sell, refinance, or gut anything else. They can't profit off stolen power. Not on our watch." I felt my breath catch. Not on our watch. Not anymore. That night, I placed the copy of the power of attorney next to the binder Nancy and I had built. It was surreal, holding proof of my own undoing. But for the first time, I didn't feel powerless, because now I could see exactly what they'd done. And that meant I could finally, legally, undo it. I disappeared from their world, but not from the fight. While Jason and Brooke smiled and Instagrammed selfies in my living room, I sat in legal aid offices, printing bank statements and notarizing letters. While they posted captions like "Home Sweet Home Home Red Heart #blessed," I was signing affidavits under oath, binding my name back to the truth. Karen, my lawyer, said it best. They expect silence. That's how this works. You stay quiet, and they get away with it. I wasn't staying quiet anymore. We built the case brick by brick, starting with the hospital's timeline, the medical records, the meds I'd been on, the documented cognitive fog from my stroke. We included every text Brooke sent while I was recovering, especially the one where she wrote, "Don't stress, Linda. We'll take care of everything." Karen smirked when she saw that one. "Everything, huh? That's gonna look real nice in front of a judge." I didn't speak to Jason. Not once. I didn't return his texts. I didn't answer when he called twice in 1 week. Probably some last-minute panic when their mail started bouncing, or when the bank flagged his account due to our filings. I stayed with Nancy. We ate quiet dinners, sometimes in silence, other times replaying every insult Brooke had ever slung in my direction, like battle prep. Nancy called them rehearsals for righteous revenge. And still, the photos kept coming. Brooke posing with a charcuterie board in my kitchen. Jason clinking glasses with his friends on my patio. A Thankful Thursday post showing off the living room I had decorated over 30 years, with a smug caption about new beginnings, but they didn't know what was coming. They didn't see the paperwork being filed, the judge reviewing our injunction request, the freeze being placed on the property, the court date set. They were laughing on the porch while I was loading evidence into folders. I wasn't trying to ruin them. I was trying to restore me. And if reclaiming what's mine left them exposed, then maybe they'd finally learn the difference between inheritance and theft, between love and ownership, and between a quiet woman and a woman who had simply been quiet too long. The knock on the door wasn't mine. It belonged to the sheriff's deputy standing beside me. He wore dark sunglasses and carried a clipboard in one hand, a folded court order in the other. His presence wasn't loud, but it was final. Brooke opened the door with her usual painted smile, already forming the word hello before her eyes darted to the badge, then to me, and then her face fell. "What is this?" she snapped, backing up. The deputy spoke evenly, no emotion. "I'm here to deliver and enforce a court order. This property has been placed under immediate legal freeze, pending an elder exploitation investigation and deed fraud litigation." Jason appeared behind her, barefoot, holding a half-eaten apple. He froze mid-bite. I stepped forward, not inside, just up to the threshold. "Hello, Brooke," I said quietly. She shook her head, mouth open like she was trying to summon a defense. "This is our house." "No," I said, looking her dead in the eye. "It's mine." And the court agrees. The deputy handed her the folded order. "You can't do this," she shrieked, voice climbing. "You signed the papers." "And the court will decide if those signatures were obtained legally," I said. "In the meantime, you are not allowed to sell, transfer, or alter this property in any way." Jason still hadn't spoken. He stood behind her, lips parted, eyes locked on the paper in her hand. He didn't ask me if I was okay. He didn't deny what they'd done. He just stood there and watched it happen. Brooke's voice cracked. "You vindictive old—" The deputy held up a hand. "That's enough, ma'am. You are being served. You may contest this through legal channels, but today, you will comply." Brooke turned and slammed the door shut so hard, the windows rattled. I stood there for another moment, listening to the muffled sound of her voice rising on the other side. Then I turned and walked down the steps. My cane tapped on the concrete like punctuation, every step a sentence that said, "You don't erase people like me. You don't steal years of labor with a signature and a smirk. And you don't silence someone just because they've been quiet long enough to make you feel safe." I didn't need to say another word. The house was frozen. But I was finally in motion. The courtroom was cold, not in temperature, but in tone. Sterile wood panels, a humming vent, the low shuffle of papers as attorneys prepared. But I sat upright, hands folded in my lap, dressed in the navy suit Nancy insisted I wear. "Looks like someone who still owns her mind," she'd said that morning, zipping me up. "Let them try and say otherwise." Brooke sat at the plaintiff's table in a crisp white blouse, hair pulled back like a politician's wife. Jason was beside her, eyes cast downward, shoulders stiff like he wanted to vanish. Their attorney, some slick young man in a fitted suit, stood first. "Your Honor," he began, We believe Ms. Warner's mental state at the time of signing the power of attorney was compromised. She had just suffered a stroke and was under heavy medication. Her children were acting in her best interest. He gestured toward Brooke with a practiced hand. Mrs. Edwards acted only to ensure her mother-in-law's finances and property were managed responsibly during her recovery. All actions were legal and, Karen stood, objection. If Ms. Warner was unfit to make financial decisions, then she was certainly unfit to sign over legal authority. The respondents can't have it both ways. The judge nodded. Sustained. Proceed with your argument. Karen stepped forward, documents in hand. Your Honor, we have medical records from the day of the signing. Ms. Warner was under post-stroke medication that affected her cognition and memory. She was not provided independent counsel, and the document was facilitated entirely by the respondents, both of whom had a clear financial interest in the outcome. She handed over hospital reports, nurse logs, even a statement from Sharon, my old roommate at Willow Glen. Then she played the recordings, my voicemails, the unanswered messages, Brooke's Instagram posts showing off renovations made before the deed was even transferred. And finally, my voice, clear and steady in the deposition we'd filmed. I wasn't confused, I said on the screen. I was exhausted. I trusted them. I thought they loved me. There was silence in the courtroom. Even Brooke's posture deflated slightly. When the judge turned to me and asked if I had anything to say, I stood slowly. I gave my son everything, I said, my voice quiet but unshaken. I put the house in my name. I worked for decades to keep it. I never once intended to give it away. Not while I was alive. I looked directly at Jason then. I thought if I made things easier for him, he'd protect me. Instead, they made me disposable. Jason didn't look up. The judge took notes, nodded slowly, then turned to Brooke. Do you have anything to present that disproves this evidence? Brooke shifted, then leaned toward her lawyer, but said nothing, because there wasn't anything left to say. They'd come expecting to win by default, but I hadn't shown up empty. I had truth, I had receipts, and I had the strength they didn't expect me to find. The gavel struck once. Based on the evidence presented, this court finds that the transfer of property deed from Linda Warner to Jason and Brooke Edwards was conducted under misleading circumstances and without informed consent. My heart stopped. The power of attorney was improperly utilized beyond its intended scope and is hereby nullified. The deed transfer is reversed. Property ownership reverts to Linda Warner, effective immediately. I didn't breathe. I just sat there as the words settled like dust after a demolition. Steady, final. Brooke gasped beside Jason, her composure snapping in one jagged breath. "This is insane!" she shrieked. "She doesn't even want that house. She can't even manage the stairs." The judge didn't flinch. "You may file an appeal if you choose, but the ruling stands." Karen gently touched my elbow. "That's it," she whispered. "You've won." Brooke turned to Jason, slapping his arm. "Say something, she's lying." But Jason just stood. No words, no eye contact. He tucked his hands in his pockets and walked out. Didn't look back, didn't defend her, didn't apologize to me, just left. The courtroom doors swung closed behind him with a hollow thud. Brooke sat down, red-faced, muttering to herself. The confident smile she once wore like a shield had collapsed entirely, crumbling under the weight of her own arrogance. I stood on trembling legs. My name was mine again, my house, my life. But I didn't feel triumphant. Not yet. Because there's no victory in realizing you were disposable to the people you loved most. No real joy in seeing them unravel. Only a quiet ache that you were ever woven into their lives at all. Nancy met me outside the courtroom. Her arms were already open. "You did it," she whispered. I hugged her tight. We did. Karen joined us with paperwork in hand. We'll get the official reversal filed this week. And I recommend putting the house in a protected trust, so this never happens again. I nodded, because it would never happen again. Not on my watch. Not while I still had breath, memory, and a name I had taken back by force. The locksmith finished before noon. By 12:05, their keys didn't work anymore. I stood inside the entryway, with the new locks clicked shut, the air heavy with silence and lemon-scented wood polish. The furniture was still there, but the soul of the house was buried beneath their whitewashed walls and tasteless renovations. This wasn't comfort. This was the shell of what used to be mine. I had just set down a box of old curtains, my curtains, when the door shook under 3 rapid bangs. I didn't flinch. I opened it slowly. Brooke stood on the porch, lip gloss smudged, sunglasses perched on her head like she'd just come back from brunch instead of betrayal. Jason trailed behind her, hands stuffed in his pockets, face tight. "You changed the locks?" she said, eyes wide with performative outrage. "Are you serious right now?" I stepped aside, but didn't invite them in. "I took back what's mine," I said calmly.